just want to make sure you guys are going to be aware that this is a big time spoiler alert. There is going to be a lot of spoilers and plot details discussed in this video. So if you have any interest in reading A Throne of Bones, do not listen to this video. Straight up. Wait, read the book, and come back to this video. This video is really more intended for all the folks that I talk to on Social Galactic who have read A Throne of Bones and the other books in the A Art of Dark and Light series. Cool. Here we go. Welcome back to another video. This would be part 2 of the review of Vox Day's A Throne of Bones. And to be honest, it's going to be less of an actual review and more of like an open discussion. I think I was critical about certain technical aspects of the Kindle version of the book yesterday, and I gave my overall opinion on what I thought, and I highly recommended the book, and I really didn't talk about any of the plot, the characters. I just gave a super high level overview of the book, basically. Just a very, very high level summary, even more high level than the Amazon reviews. I think even those gave a lot away. So let's see here. I saved a number of quotes. I don't know, probably about 25% of the way in the book. I started like deciding that I wanted to, take some excerpts and highlights. With the Kindle app, it's very easy. You just literally drag your finger over the section that you want to save. You can even choose a color, and it saves it for you. So let me just say, I probably learned more about actual Roman life, Roman philosophy, especially since they became a Christian empire, and Roman family life, the daily life stuff, and the life of what it might be like living and working in a Roman legion through this book than I've ever known. I I've never cracked open a history book about Rome except for I think his name is Vesuvius. He's a Roman architect. I have his book. It's in Latin and English. But that's about architecture. It's called De Architectura, on architecture. It's awesome. I'll talk about that in a different video. But other than that, I know nothing about the Roman Empire, and I learned a lot through this fantasy version of it called Amor in this book. So let's read this. Oh, where'd it go? No, never mind. I had it. The crows that had become his father's sigil were carved into towering ears that rose from the back of the chair, while its legs were shaped into large talons to signify the eagles of the legion, one for each that Marcus's father presently commanded. I think I saved this because at the time I thought maybe this was alluding to Vox Day's chair. If you watch the dark stream, you can see that he sits in a large wooden chair. And it looks like it's got possibly, I can't remember. Let me see if I can pull up a picture. If you just Google Vox Day dark stream, there's probably a picture of his chair. Looks like he did a lot of stuff standing up in the past. Wow. I guess I got on the dark stream way late. He used to do a lot of his dark streams just standing up. Yeah, you got some big arms there, Vox. Yeah, so if I look at his chair, it looks like he has 2 animals on the top, but I can't tell what they are. One of these pictures is a little fuzzy. Let me just type in chair and see if it actually is more specific. Nope. Let me see if I can pull up another picture of him sitting in his chair, like a more recent photo. Let's see. Yeah, that one might be good. Those look like dragons or lions. It looks like a cat. It looks like a lion that is on his chair. It looks like he has 2 lions. So I wouldn't say that this is necessarily alluding to Vox's chair, though it is similar, isn't it? It is a similar style chair. So I just thought that line was very interesting. Let's take another line. This one is from chapter 24, according to the book. I don't remember the book actually having chapters, but supposedly that's where this one comes from. He keeps pushing for extended and expanding the citizenship, as if calling a Galabrian or Quinquitaran an Amoran is somehow magically going to transform them into proper Amorans. I know exactly why I saved this. This is alluding to the concept of magic dirt. I think I've heard Vox literally use that term, but it's funny how this book has so many actual political parallels to the current globalization of the United States. And this is definitely alluding to the whole concept of magic dirt. In other words, just because someone from another country that's totally different from ours sets foot onto American soil, they don't magically become American, or in this case, Amoran. The book, just here's a spoiler for you, the book definitely has a political struggle happening between, maybe the globalists of their time versus the nationalists. The Amoran Empire has this problem where they have been taxing their vassal states, which were not part of the empire, like the provinces, and the provinces have been getting pissed about it and rising up. And one of the senators, his name is Patronus, wants to make them all citizens, and one of the other senators, Corvus, does not, or I guess he's a general or a consul. But there's basically like a nationalist versus globalist struggle happening in this book. This is why I saved that line. Let's read another line. I remember why I wrote this one. This is a quick one, but it's, he damn near had me convinced until he stopped speaking and the spell wore off. And I thought that was funny. I know this book was probably written way before Vox and Owen got together, but Owen always talks about spells and wizards casting spells. And as soon as the guy stops talking, the spell wore off. I just thought that was funny. Probably nothing to do with that, but here's another one. You're reacting, not thinking. Stop and think about what you know before you walk right into another trap. This I saved because I thought this was really cool. This was happening right in the part where Marcus Valerius Clericus wakes up to find out that his fellow tribunes and his general and his legate have all been murdered in the camp in the middle of the night, and he barely survives. He confronts an assassin in the middle of the night and he gets wounded, but his armor protects him. Oh, or was it the other way around? He wounds the assassin pretty bad, who escapes, and can't remember if the assassin makes it or not. But I remember this just being a really intense scene to read. I was really into it, and just how Vox writes his thought process. Clericus is really he's a really rational guy, and he just stops and says, you're reacting, you're not thinking. Stop and think about what you know before you walk right into another trap. It just seemed really cool to me. Very, very cool scene. This book is hardcore, guys. A lot of murder, assassinations, beheadings for breaking orders, that kind of stuff. It's awesome. This one I definitely saved because it's like a Christian prayer right here in the book. They don't call it Christianity, but they definitely have their own version of Christianity, don't they? And here's what that prayer says. Immaculate Son, hear our prayer. Lord, we are men of war, but we know we are washed in your most holy blood. We do not fear to face the enemy, but now we find ourselves betrayed by our own comrades. Son of God, you know what this is like. You too have been betrayed. Be with us. We thank you that you stand with us now. Guide us, guard us all, and grant us victory. You are the Alpha and the Omega. You are the rider on the white horse, Lord. Show us your hand, and may your Father's will be done. Amen. I just thought that was super cool, man. This prayer you could easily translate into real life. Immaculate Son is Jesus. I just thought this was super, super cool, and so I saved it. Let's see, here's another one. Time and observation. There is no substitute. It's a skill most never learn, one that most never even know exists, but keep your eyes open and eventually the patterns will present themselves. The patterns will begin to present themselves. I really like this one. This is being, who says this in this actually? I just want to, it's House, I think it's Patronus is saying this to Severa. Yeah, it's Patronus. Severa has this little like sort of non-existent fling with the gladiator, and Patronus has to show her that it's actually all BS and the gladiator wasn't actually writing love letters to her. And I think it's part of this conversation. I'm not exactly sure. It's 37% into the book, so it's possible that we already passed that part. But yeah, let's see. Yeah, I think that's what they are talking about. Clusius the gladiator. He basically just, this is basically I think a nod to pattern recognition. We hear about IQ and pattern recognition all the time. If you listen to Kurgan, if you listen to Owen, if you listen to Vox, and I mean, this is just exactly what they're always talking about. It just takes time, observation. You study history, you study the events of the world as they play out, and eventually you'll start to see the patterns. You'll start to see the code in the matrix that we live in. Very cool line. Let's go for another. Oof, I saved a lot of these guys. A lot of them. Here we go. Aristoteles was an enthusiastic categorizer, and in one of his more important works, with which I have no doubt as I learn, men, you are intimately... Wow. Okay, let me just reread that whole thing. Aristoteles was an enthusiastic categorizer, and in one of his more important works, with which I have no doubt as a learned man you are intimately familiar, he divided men into two categories. You may recall that he concluded there are men who are capable of being persuaded of a truth through dialectic, which is to say sweet reason, or if you prefer, the inexorable progression of logic. And then he asserted there are also those who cannot be instructed and therefore cannot be convinced of anything through argument based on knowledge, but rather require manipulation and persuasion through having their emotions played upon, which device he calls rhetoric. Would you say that you agree with this, Gnaeus Junius? So, clearly, this is a nod to Aristotle, and a nod to the two forms of persuasion, the dialectic and the rhetoric. And who do we have in this little sphere of ours? We have Vox Day, who is a pro at the dialectic, and then we've got Owen Benjamin, who is a pro at the rhetoric. And look how popular Owen's become. I myself am definitely more of the dialectic persuasion, but I thought that was really cool because if you watch the dark stream, guys, if you listen to it every few nights when it comes on, like, this stuff gets brought up all the time. So it's really nice to see that Vox has written about it in his books. Let's go for another one here. She wasn't entirely sure he had done right by her, seeing how happily Tara prattled away about the new jewelry she had seen on various women at the theater the previous week. There was something to be said for the careless, cheerful life of the beautiful butterfly. Yes, ignorance is bliss. I think that's all that is said there. Here's another tip of the hat to Vox's own library, maybe, but it goes like this. The walls of the room were lined with a vast collection of leather-bound books that filled the shelves all the way up to the ceiling high overhead, broken only by a fireplace on the far side of the room and wooden stairs that led to a narrow walkway lining the walls where the first floor had once been. The fact that Vox does all his streams in front of a library, and it looks like, from what we see, the walls are endless. It's very interesting to read this line in his book. Oh, where'd it go? I had one. It disappeared on me. Here's another one. Corvus took one from him, sketching an abbreviated tree from his forehead to his heart in the hopes that accepting his host's offer would not be viewed by the Almighty as dabbling in the forbidden. He raised the glass as if to offer a toast, but then his conscience overcame him, and he lowered it again. Why did I save this one? Sketching the abbreviated tree on the forehead is the way they do a cross in this book. Oh yeah, he was about to drink a really cool concoction that the Elven ambassador had given him, and then he had to double check that it wasn't like some satanic or necromantic potion. He straight up asks, "These are not spirits of the dead, are they, by any chance?" But just kind of goes to show the seriousness of their Christianity in this book. Here's a pretty cool race. Here's a cool line about a race. "We are a dying race, Consul. Our warriors don't wish to marry and are more interested in making war than children. Our elfices are too enchanted with their freedom and their sorcery to devote the 30 years or more required to properly raise a child. Our poets are but a limpid shadow of their predecessors. Our aristocracy is decadent to the point that half of our nobles only manage to get out of bed to crawl into another one, and our mages are too caught up in their esoteric interests to care about what happens to the race. What were once 7 great kingdoms have now been reduced to 3 moderate powers, and Alebrian is more a collection of tombs and tomes of past deeds than a proper city, let alone a kingdom." Yeah, because in this book, guys, the elves are already, as Vox might say, pre-collapsed or post-collapse race. They've already had their fall. They used to have 7 kingdoms, and they are reduced to 3. But look at all the lines that you hear here, or I should say you read here. What do you think what do you think this relates to in regards to our own world? "Our warriors don't wish to marry." Check. Have that here. "They're more interested in making war than children." Yep. We have low birth rates here, guys, in all of the West. "Our elfices are too enchanted with their freedom and their sorcery to devote 30 years or more required to properly raise a child." Literally feminism. Which is funny because these elves live like forever. They have immortality or something close to it. And, a human is one thing, not wanting to spend 30 years raising a child, but an elf, come on. It's pretty sad. But yeah, that's definitely alluding and talking about feminism. "Our poets are but a limpid shadow of their predecessors." Yep. "Our aristocracy is decadent to the point that half our nobles only manage to get out of bed to crawl into another one." Do you think our politicians are not decadent? They are incredibly decadent. This whole paragraph is basically describing the West, the current post Christian West. It's very sad, but that's exactly why I saved this line. Let's see. "Marcus looked from the Amorn legate to the Senathi king. They were powerful men, dangerous even, but both were men without honor. Was this what he would have to become if he wished to survive and prosper in a fallen world?" Just a line that alludes to the Christianity, and Marcus Clericus actually was looking to become a priest or archbishop, or basically go into the holy line of the, I forget what the church is called in Amor, but he was looking to be a church guy and not a soldier, but then he switched and changed his mind. Let me just kind of scroll down. I don't want to necessarily go over all of these because I got a lot, and this video is going to go upon 20 minutes pretty soon. But oh yeah. "What valor do all the effigies of warriors past convey upon you if the only bones you see are not on the battlefield but rolling upon the floors of whorehouses? You drink yourselves to oblivion and go to bed with the rise of the Lightbringer. At a bell when the generals of yore be raising their standards as the legions begin their march." It's talking about the decadence once again, but it's funny that he meant, or I should say uses the word Lightbringer, because in my research, I'm pretty sure the Lightbringer, although I think he's referring to the sun here, but if you Google Lightbringer, you're going to get Lucifer. Lucifer, aka Satan, is often referred to as the Lightbringer. So definitely something to pay attention to in this book. I mean, I think it's only mentioned here once, and it could just be a coincidence, but it's interesting, and that's why I saved that line. Let's see. And suddenly she felt he had given her the key she required to understand him. He was the youngest son of a great man whose approval he could never hope to gain. That was why he had not embarked upon the cursus on honorum, and why he was so willing to portray himself as a clown. For all his seeming confidence and relaxed demeanor, he was an empty vessel of self-doubt. Most likely he had figured out early in his youth that the only way he could avoid losing was to refuse to play the game. He was quick to diminish himself so that his father or perhaps his older brothers could not do it for him. It was a habit she had long observed in Tertius, who, despite his keen intelligence, was never able to live up to the example set by their father, or even the lesser examples of their dashing brothers. I saved this because dude's got daddy issues. Clearly it's described, but I think this is the gamma male, or maybe the omega male or something. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, this part is about Sextus Valerius, who is one of the sons of Magnus, who is betrothed to Severa, the daughter of Patronus, and supposedly very handsome, but he's a bit of a gamma, if I'm reading this correctly, or maybe a delta. Definitely not the alpha or the bravo or the sigma of that family. The forum is in uproar, and the Senate is divided. Everyone is terrified that the Maruvi and the Quincatarii won't be the only allied peoples to revolt against us. Half our legions are filled with allies rather than true Amorans, you know. Oh, God, have you guys seen the pictures of the U.S. military? It's becoming so female, so black, so Latino. Like, are there any true Americans left in the U.S. military? I'm starting to wonder. But that's just kind of why I saved this. Like, look at the pictures of soldiers from the 40s and look at them today. Like, we had some guy on Social Galactic tell us that he was going to get out of the military as soon as he could because of all the diversity crap they shoved down their throats. Like, they literally actually have an ideology of diversity in the U.S. military, which really, really saddens me. But that's what this line alluded to. The 11 candidates for the 3 consulships stood shoulder to shoulder on the stage, awaiting the announcement of which tribe would begin the voting. I saved this. Doesn't sound like there's anything in particular that would merit saving this line, except I remembered thinking, shoulder to shoulder? Aren't they going to get scared of the coronavirus? They're not 6 feet apart. And it made me realize, like, holy shit, I can't watch anything on TV or read anything in a book without thinking about diseases being spread. Like, that's how conditioned this coronavirus shit has gotten me. And I just thought it was sad, so I saved that line, and that's why I read it. Civil wars are ugly. Brothers turn against fathers. Civil wars are ugly. Brothers turn against brothers and sons against their fathers. And my God, that's basically how it is with my dad. It's super sad. But he only reads the New York Times, so he thinks Trump is a Russian puppet, and here I am always trying to tell him I disagree with him, and he basically says, if you vote for Trump, you're a traitor, and you can see how divisive and really bad that language is, because treason is punishable by death. So this line really stuck out to me because as America collapses, which it's certainly going to do in the next 10 to 12 years, that's what we're going to start seeing. Like, I'm probably going to lose out on the relationship with my dad, but so be it. It's really sad, though. So I figured I'd save that line. 500 years, give or take a half century, appears to be the cycle. So this is talking about the Watchers, which I thought was one of the coolest concepts that gets introduced later into the book. Big time spoiler, so if you've gotten this far, I'm sorry if you haven't read the book. But I definitely want to commend Vox on writing them in. I thought that was super cool. And I was wondering if the Watchers were part of like a satanic Promethean cult. Vox always talks about the Prometheans, and with Owen it's the Masons and maybe the Bohemian Grove, but there's always like that ancient group that's always been in power from the beginning of time, right? And in this book, it's the Watchers, and they're basically immortal. They cannot be killed. They literally heal. Even if you burn them to dust, they grow back and become whole again. And I wonder, because in the book they basically like are sometimes in positions of power or sometimes lurking not in power, and they're all seeking to get back to like this thing called the Shadow Gate so they can escape this realm. And it made me wonder, is that what Satan is trying to do here on Earth? Is he trying to escape? Is he trapped here? Is he desperately trying to get back into heaven, but God will not let him? That kind of thing made me wonder. So every 500 years, supposedly, the Shadow Gate pops up, and the Watchers are always planning on taking control of whatever land it's in so they can access it. Let's see. Oh, yeah. This is a great line. I don't know if he was what he claimed or not. I myself have been worshipped as a god more times than I can count. I didn't even hear about him until a century after his death, but I heard enough to know that he wasn't one of us and he wasn't one of you. That was when I knew that it was safe to go through the gate, that there is water, not rocks, waiting below. This is the Watcher talking to Corvus. So Corvus basically enters we'll call it the Vatican of Amor, and he has to go see the Sanctified Father, who is the Pope, basically. And it's kind of suspected as you're reading that the Pope is really taken over by Satan or something, but it's actually one of his side guys, one of his like second or thirds in command, who's a Watcher, and he's casting a spell over the Sanctified Father. And then Corvus brings up the Immaculate and Jesus, and, well, they call it basically Jesus, but he brings up the Immaculate. And this is what the Watcher says. He doesn't know what he was, but he, based on everything he heard, he knows that he wasn't a Watcher, but he also wasn't a man. So, very likely, Son of God. I thought that was a super cool line. It's sad what happens here, but the poor Sanctified Father tries to perform an exorcism on this guy and ends up dying, and then Corvus ends up dying. But the most important thing that I'd want to bring up here is that Corvus refuses the ticket. And it looks like I didn't actually save the line, but there is basically a whole line where, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. And you will be the master of the world. Serve me in this only for a little while, and I will give you everything you've ever dreamed, everything you've ever wanted. What does that sound like? Doesn't that sound exactly like Satan talking to Jesus when he's doing his 40-day fast in the desert, offering him the world? He's offering him the ticket, and Corvus says no. So what does Corvus do? Knowing he's about to die, he chops this guy up into little pieces, knowing that he'll regrow, but then burns his pieces to ash so that he won't regrow fast enough to be effective to get out of this Shadow Gate thing. And Corvus sacrifices himself. He dies. This Watcher thing burns him alive from the inside or something with some unholy power. And it was sad to hear about Corvus's death. But this book is so good, guys. But he didn't take the ticket, and he knew that he was going to die for not taking the ticket, and he still didn't take it. That is a true Christian warrior, guys. Let's see. Just a couple left that I want to read. Eye Popper turned his own head to the side, wondering how he might get at it. Then he pecked eagerly at the more accessible orb. It burst open with the usual pop, and Eye Popper cheerfully began his much-anticipated repast with no small degree of relish. I just love that Vox Day gives us a chapter that is from the perspective of the crows that fly above battlefields of dead guys and pick at their eyes. And this crow's name is Eye Popper, and that's because he pops out eyes, so he loves eating eyeballs from dead bodies. I just thought that was super cool. This line not only is in this book, but I also read a similar line straight out of Mere Christianity. When I read about this, I was like, oh yeah, that is some C.S. Lewis right there. And here it goes. Pride. That was his problem. That was his sin. Wasn't that what Father Gennadius had told him at Salakti? It was his pride that had been the source of his downfall. He wanted to prove himself better than Magnus, greater than the great. And why? For what purpose? He'd been seeking his own glory, not Amor's, not House Valerius's, and most certainly not God's. Pride is vanity, and vanity is one of the worst sins out there, guys. Read about that in Mere Christianity. The last line that I saved, I remember just thinking like, holy shit, I had to save it. Big time spoiler. She wondered if the brother she'd been hunting all these years had been the consul or his holiness, probably the latter. She reflected, though the former would have been more apropos. She would have to watch for his reappearance, of course, but in the meantime, there were others she must find. They were not Namor, but then the Empire was not the only power in Selenoth. Basically, Severa, for her entire life or whatever, had like a slave or a servant in their house who was a watcher. These watchers, these Prometheans, were basically everywhere. And I just thought that was really cool. Something I didn't save and almost kind of forgot about until I just read that line is that Severa joins like a cult of some kind, a secret society that praises and worships like a Trinitarian or a three god female goddess system, but they hide and they're secret. And we all know about secret societies, right? And they're generally not good, but I'm not really sure where Vox is going with that. And I'm hoping to read more about that in the next book, A Sea of Skulls, which is currently not complete, so you might want to wait before purchasing that on Amazon. But this book was fantastic. I don't typically do a review with spoilers and read all these lines. Like, we're going into 30 minutes here. But I thought since a lot of you have read the book, we could have a really fun discussion about what you think Vox alludes to or makes parallels to. You clearly know what I've got my opinions on. Yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys will read that book if you haven't, but I'm also hoping you didn't listen to this if you haven't, because I just went over a lot of stuff. Maybe too much stuff for someone who hasn't read the book, so I'll put a warning at the beginning of this video. But let's have a discussion, guys. This was probably the best book I've read all year, and will read. I have started I already forgot the name. There Will Be War. It looks like it's a collection of short stories set in the sci-fi universe by Jerry Pournelle, who wrote this stuff in the 80s during the height of the Cold War. So, yeah, it's pretty awesome so far. Anyway, thanks for listening if you made it this far. I appreciate it. If you want to help me game this YouTube algorithm, go ahead and subscribe and hit the like button if you haven't already, and we'll catch you on the next one.